renewed dialogue. I want to say that as Christians, I think we have to begin always with the global challenge that's threatening the future of humankind at the moment. There are many critical and even terminal concerns that are on our plate. We have climate change and natural disasters, which are following from those, and the possibility in the future of massive migration. We have new pandemics. COVID-19 is, I think, just one of the foretaste of things to come. We have poverty and injustice, always ongoing. And now, of course, we have Ukraine and a war that in the background threatens weapons of mass destruction. Now, these are really critical and crucial issues, and we as Christians are in the midst of them. But I think, in fact, and believe that these are really presenting problems, and that the real issue is how we get our act together as a global community of communities to tackle these issues as one world. And therefore, a prophetic church is never more urgent to point to what Christian faith has to say about the hallmarks of a global community and what is required to bring it into being. And prophecy, I mean, in the sense of forthtelling rather than foretelling, in the sense of speaking truth to power, in humility, not arrogance, but with courage and conviction. So this evening I want to ask the question, what does a prophetic church need to fulfill this calling? I want to offer 7 hallmarks of a prophetic church which build on each other. They seem to be already things that are around and known, but not really put together. But I want to link them tonight because they are, in a sense, things that follow one from another. And I hope as I speak, as I call out the number of the hallmark, it will come up on the screen in a diagram. So first of all, a prophetic church needs a theology of prophetic vocation. And because we face a communal crisis, a prophetic church needs to offer a vision of the kingdom as a community. A community because it encompasses, on the one hand, a sovereign, the Trinity, the zenith of all communities, the epitome of diversity within unity, and a people, its members, the people of God. And so it isn't just a kingdom, it is a kingdom community. And I believe that there are 5 gifts of the Trinity, its sovereign, which are absolutely hallmarks of this kingdom community. First of all, life, the gift of life. Christ said, I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly. Secondly, liberation. Christ said, the Lord has appointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed. And the gift of love. John wrote, we love because God first loved us. Fourthly, the gift of learning. And Christ said, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And finally, the gift of servant leadership. Christ said, whoever would be great among you must be your servant. Now, these gifts, and I can only touch on them very briefly this evening, these gifts of the kingdom community form the foundations of a prophetic church. So secondly, a prophetic church needs the power of prophecy. Number 2, a communal spirituality. And here I see life drawing on a Celtic spirituality, which is rich in the understanding of the gift of life and creation. Liberation, calling on an Ignatian spirituality. The gift of love, calling on Methodism and all its hymns, Charles Wesley's hymns, great hymns of passion and of love. And the gift of learning from the Society of Friends, as they sit very often quietly reflecting on the Spirit amongst them. And of course, prayer and worship and the sacraments. All these are the power of prophecy, but it is a communal spirituality. And then thirdly, a prophetic church needs agents of prophecy. the people of God as the church's primary resource for mission. And here, in contrast to the prophets of the Old Testament, who are very often individuals, prophecy now is a communal vocation. Since Christ has come, he has entrusted it to his people. And the laity are prophets of equal standing with those ordained. They are the agents of prophecy. And then fourthly, a diaconal church, which is always a prophetic church, and I now call it a diaconal church, because the people of God are the servants of the kingdom community. And therefore the church becomes a servant of the diaconal church. The church is not the kingdom, it is the servant of the kingdom. And so, as I say, fourthly, a diaconal church, which is always a prophetic church, needs a focus of prophecy, needs to acquire the art of discernment. And that means the laity identifying where the gifts of the kingdom community are manifest or neglected in daily life. It means discernment, the laity discerning where the signs of life, liberation, love, learning and servant leadership are evident or ignored. In situations, whether these are great or small, from the nation to the family, both the sacred and the secular world, discernment is imperative because the kingdom community is ever present and in our midst. It is universal and inclusive. It is already at work in the world. And then fifthly, a diaconal church, a prophetic church, needs a response to prophecy. And this is intervention to transform the life, not of the church so much, but of society. Where there are signs of the gifts of the kingdom community, where they are present, in the family or the school or the hospital or the office or the factory or the town hall, the people of God are called to affirm, to nurture and bear witness to the source of those gifts. And where those signs are neglected or ignored, the people of God are called to challenge that neglect and to demonstrate the meaning of those gifts, and as and when appropriate, make their source known. And then in the sixth place, the diaconal church looks to the Trinity for the outcome of prophecy. This is where faith and hope come to the fore. That outcome is the communal transformation of the life of humankind. And this means that human collectives in every sphere of the life of society, sacred and secular, not least in the economic and political spheres, are transformed by the kingdom community's gifts of life, liberation, love, learning, and servant leadership. And that human collectives, and not least the church itself, become microcosms of the kingdom community, all laying the foundation for the creation of a global community of communities to address the crises of our time. And then seventhly, and perhaps just a little bit more extended in what I'm saying about it, a diaconal church needs servant leaders. This means that the two main historic forms of ordained ministry need renewal. In what ways? Well, first of all, presbyters. Presbyters will need to become an order of continuity within a diaconal church, recognizing their calling to serve that church as an institution. That entails preserving and celebrating and sharing society's Christian heritage through worship and education in the faith and pastoral care. It means drawing attention to where that heritage has in the past reflected the church's calling to be the servant of the kingdom community, but acknowledging openly and humbly where it has not, as in recent years, with sadness we will say, with failure to protect children and young people in its care, and with failure to create one church, let alone one world, as we see with sadness in the conflict between the Russian and Ukrainian Orthodox churches. But presbyters, above all, must enable the institutional church to become a credible model of the kingdom community. And then secondly, of our historic orders of ministry, a renewed diaconate will need to become an order of mission. If presbyters are there to take on that very important role of continuity, a renewed diaconate will in its turn need to become an order of mission, to serve the church as a movement, not as an institution. And that means enabling the church to express its prophetic vocation as the servant of the kingdom community, to help the church to be a movement for the communal transformation of the public domain. That is the worlds of education, health, work, science, law, government. To enable the church to engage with a world in crisis, our world in crisis, in ways which can enable it to survive and to flourish. And as in the past, the religious orders enabled the church to be a movement for the transformation of society through a diversity of prophetic apostolates. Now it's the turn, I believe, of a renewed diaconate to also assume that calling. As an order of mission, this renewed diaconate, therefore, has two dimensions to its vocation. Firstly, it has to be a diaconate which are animators and catalysts, affirming and assisting the driving forces of communal change, especially other social movements, seeking to challenge them where they are trying to uphold the gifts of the kingdom community. Destruction of a planet by upholding the gift of life. Those pursuing racism and gender inequality by employing the gift of liberation. Mistreatment of migrants by offering the gift of love. Challenging fake news and indoctrination by encouraging the gift of learning. Standing up to dictatorship and autocracy by affirming the gift of servant leadership. And perhaps above all, challenging xenophobia and jingoism by upholding the inclusivity and universality of the kingdom community. That is their first dimension, to act as animators or catalysts, seeking to get alongside those social movements in the name of the church as a movement and a servant of the kingdom community. But by far, and secondly, the most important responsibility of a renewed diaconate is to be enablers and educators of the people of God, as builders of kingdom communities wherever they live, work, or play, even if these are often only small steps toward the creation of a global community and meeting the crises of our time. And so the vocation of a renewed diaconate in this dimension is to gather the people of God, to inspire them for their prophetic vocation, to affirm and encourage them, to model for them what it means to be a kingdom community, to educate and mentor them, to encourage them to share their experiences, very important, and to empower them with a spirituality which resources them. And so finally, to be a prophetic church, a diaconal church needs a renewed, reoriented to become an order of mission, of communal transformation, which is retrained with new skills and experience of intervention and especially enabling, and is reaffirmed as a full and equal order of mission, working in partnership with presbyters as an order of continuity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. When David and I were exchanging emails about this presentation, he said, it's a bit like trying to pour a quart of milk into a pint bottle. And I must say that your articulation of very complex ideas, you captured the breadth of your prophetic concerns and the depth with your insights and wisdom. I'm most appreciative of your passion and your vision for the church and for the diaconate. Thank you very much, David. We're going to have some time in breakout